Have you ever stopped to think about why the story of flight happened the way it did? From simple kites to rickety gliders and then all the way to jumbo jets? Well, it turns out it's not just a story about clever inventors. It's really a story about us as humans slowly uncovering the laws of physics, laws that were there the whole time, just waiting for us to find them. All right, let's get into it.
I mean, it's a dream that feels like it's baked into our DNA, right? For thousands of years, we've looked up at the birds, just soaring around without a care in the world, and thought, I want to do that. That one single powerful desire, it's the engine behind myths, legends, and of course, countless real-world attempts to finally conquer the sky. And those early attempts, well, they were a mixed bag. In our myths, we have the story of Icarus with his wax wings flying a little too close to the sun. But in reality, we had ornithopters. These were incredibly brave inventors who would literally strap on flapping wings and leap from cliffs. And yeah, they pretty much all met the same fate as Icarus. Why? Because they were copying what the birds did, the flapping, but they didn't understand how they did it. Our bodies, our muscles and bones just aren't built for that. So flapping was a total dead end. The real progress, the first tiny steps toward actual flight, began when the pioneers stopped trying to act like birds and started trying to think like them. This kicked off the great age of gliders. This is where they finally started to get a handle on the first two giant problems you have to solve: how to get lift and how to stay in control.
And listen, this wasn't some overnight success. It was a slow, painful, piece-by-piece process that took up an entire century. It really started with Sir George Cayley, who actually got his coachman to fly in a glider. Then you have the amazing Otto Lilienthal, who made thousands of controlled flights before a tragic crash. All of this painstaking work laid the foundation for the Wright brothers, who were just obsessed with testing and perfecting glider design.
So after all that trial and error, what did they actually learn? A few absolutely critical things. First, you have to be moving forward, constantly. That forward motion is what creates the airflow you need for lift. Second, you can actually steer the thing using a tail with a rudder for left and right and an elevator for up and down. But the biggest lesson was this. Before you could even dream of adding an engine, you had to become an absolute master of flying without one. Okay, so they'd figured out lift and control. They were masters of the glide. But now they faced the final boss. They needed an engine. And this was a huge problem because it couldn't be just any engine. It had to be strong enough to push the plane forward, but light enough that it didn't just drag the whole contraption back to the ground. This was the last crucial piece of the puzzle. Now, to really get how they solved this, we have to talk for a second about a beautiful little piece of physics called Bernoulli's principle. It sounds complicated, but it's actually a pretty simple and amazing idea. Whenever a fluid, and remember, air is a fluid, speeds up, its pressure goes down. That's it. That one little idea is the secret sauce behind how an airplane wing works. Here's how it works. An airplane wing is designed with a curve on top and a flatter bottom. So as the wing slices through the air that goes over that longer curved top surface has to travel faster to keep up with the air going underneath. And what's did Bernoulli tell us? Faster air means lower pressure. So now you've got this area of low pressure on top of the wing and higher pressure underneath. And that higher pressure literally pushes the wing and the entire plane up into the sky. That's lift. And this brings us right back to Wilbur and Orville Wright. You see, their true genius wasn't just that they invented one thing, it was that they were the ones who finally put all the pieces together. They took 100 years of hard-won knowledge about how to control a glider, and they combined it with this brand new tech, a lightweight internal combustion engine. And when you look at what happened at Kitty Hawk, you can see all those pieces clicking into place. They couldn't find an engine light enough, so they built their own. They figured out that a propeller is basically just a wing that spins, and they designed one to create forward thrust, and then they poured in all those hours and hours they'd spent mastering control in their gliders. The result? History. The world's first real, sustained, controlled, powered flight. Now, those early propeller planes were obviously world-changing, but they had their limits. There's only so high and so fast you can go spinning a propeller. To break those barriers, to really shrink the globe, was going to require a totally new way of thinking about propulsion, one that relied on a completely different law of physics. It was time for the jets. The jet engine isn't about air pressure and curved wings. No, it's all about good old Sir Isaac Newton and his third law of motion. You know this one. We all learned it in school. For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. It's simple, it's elegant, and man, is it powerful. A jet engine is basically just Newton's third law in a can. It sucks in a massive amount of air at the front, squeezes it like crazy, and then mixes it with fuel and sets it on fire. The result is a controlled explosion of super hot gas that blasts out the back at incredible speed. That's the action. And the equal and opposite reaction? An immense force pushing the plane forward. And the effect of this new technology, it was just mind-blowing. The numbers from back then tell the whole story. In the 2 decades after World War II, the number of people flying went from just 2 million to 90 million. The jet age wasn't just coming, it had arrived, and it was changing everything fast. It didn't just grow the pie, it created a whole new one and completely wiped out the old way of doing things. Check this out. Between 1950 and 1975, the number of people flying across the Atlantic grew by 40 times. And in that same window, the number of people crossing by ocean liner, it dropped by 80%. The grand old ships just couldn't compete anymore. The jet literally revolutionized travel. Suddenly, planes could go way faster and way further. They could fly high above the bumpy weather thanks to cabin pressurization, giving you a smooth ride. Then came the jumbo jets, the 747s, that made flying cheap enough for regular people. Our entire world got smaller and more connected, all because of this new way of applying physics. So when you step back and look at this whole story, from Icarus to the jumbo jet, you start to see this incredible pattern. This wasn't just a random series of inventions happening by chance. The history of flight had to happen in this exact order because its story was basically written in advance by the laws of physics. Here's the big takeaway. Our human progress is locked to the order in which we figure out these basic rules of the universe. It was impossible to invent a jet engine before we understood Newton's laws. And it was impossible to build a propeller plane before we really understood Bernoulli's principle and the physics of lift. It's an unbreakable sequence. It's like a tech tree in a video game. You can't unlock the next level until you've mastered the one before it. First, you have to master flight itself. That's the gliders. Only then can you add power. And only after you've mastered that can you jump to a whole new, more powerful physical principle. Each step is built on the last one. You know, a passage from the source material for this analysis really nails it. It says, if the properties of those materials were different, then human social and cultural history would be different. Think about that. Our entire history is shaped by the basic properties of our world. If hot gas didn't expand, there would be no jet age. It's that fundamental. So, I'll leave you with this final thought to chew on. We like to think of ourselves as the authors of our own history, right? That we make all the choices. But how much of our story was already written for us, just waiting in the unchangeable laws of the universe for us to discover?